Hi, happy Indigenous Peoples Day. And fuck Brett Gelman. And fuck any celebrity that over the last 48 hours is using their celebrity influence to continue a toxic bias spin on the horrific events that are killing people on both sides of the Israeli-Palestinian coin in the Gaza Strip this weekend. Fuck anyone like Brett Gelman that says if you want to have a discussion, researched and educated about what's happening in Gaza this weekend, that you're anti-Semitic. That is disgusting. That is fanaticism. That is fascism. That is continuing the propaganda and the censorship of the Third Reich and Hitler's SS that created the Holocaust in a new spin, okay? We need to have an involved research discourse on what's happening this weekend in Israel and Palestine. And these events, these atrocities of rapes against Israeli women is absolutely disgusting and they're horrific. But we need to talk about all of it. We need to talk about how that is disgusting and that I do not support Hamas or Hezbollah. Obviously, are you a fucking idiot of a celebrity that you would think if you want to have a discussion about the civilian casualties on the Palestine side that means you side with terrorism and that's fucking just so stupid and abhorrent that Brett Gelman and so many of these jackasses who once again take a global catastrophe, whether it's COVID or whatever, to use their soapbox to spread fucking even more toxic misinformation, miseducation. Like, it's just lunatic. It's just absolutely lunatic. We need to have a diplomatic, educated discussion on what's happening this weekend in Israel and Palestine, because as we see these signs now of I support Israel coming from across this country, we know that what could happen is another fucking Afghanistan, Iraq quagmire, like what happened in 2001, after 9/11, and fucking the military complex profiting off another fucking quagmire that it should not be putting its nose in. And that's why we need to talk about it. On top of all these other reasons, we need to talk about Israel and Palestine this weekend. And, you know, it's Indigenous Peoples Day. And to get to the root of why we need to talk about Israel and Palestine in an educated form that includes Middle Eastern, Arabian representation on these news shows, and not just have fucking Dana Bash and Anderson Cooper, but have Middle Eastern representation on these news shows and commentators and ambassadors and politicians. We need to have that representation because 400 years after Columbus or so came to America and the Bermudas and the Caribbeans and started massacring the locals or enslaving them to find gold or help them colonize, 400 years or so since Plymouth and Jamestown in this country, the indigenous peoples of this country have been fucking wiped out. They've been wiped out and there's no representation for them at all in the news and barely anything on TV other than maybe reservation dogs and a few other things. And what's sickening even more so is that in the last 4 years of me researching Plymouth and Jamestown and the founding of this country along the eastern seaboard, but with the help of indigenous peoples, there is no fucking museums from Jamestown to Plymouth to even Salem, Massachusetts, that have an indigenous tour guide. There is no Native American giving their narrative perspective on what happened in the massacring and the wiping out of all Native American peoples in this country in the last 400 years. And that's disgusting and that's sickening. And that is what continues to feed one part of my discussion about Israel and Palestine. I'm partially Iraqi and Iranian, I find out. I was raised with one of my best friends being Syrian. My other best friends are Jewish. I love both cultures so much, and all my heart and soul, from the music to the cuisine to the people. And it is a travesty, and it's so disturbing to know that there's Israelis being killed, and I have a Jewish friend in Israel, and that there's the fucking Palestinian women and children that are being killed as well this weekend. And Palestinian women and children being killed since May of this weekend, May of this year, when they were barely even fucking reported on CNN. And Palestinian women and children in innocence of being killed in this Israeli-Palestinian conflict for the last 40, 60, 70 years, the same way innocent Israeli women and children being killed. And, two wrongs do not make a right. That's the best, most pathetically dumbed down thing I could ever say about the Israel-Palestine conflict. Two wrongs do not make a right. And these guys had just been firing rockets out of each other and using man-pads that come from the U.S. government, like the way we sold man-pads to certain people to fight, around Benghazi and Libya after the fall of Libya, and these man-pads that are these, laser-guided missiles then get into the hands of fucking terrorist groups. It's like, it's such a complicated quagmire in Israel and Palestine right now, and the atrocities of women being raped and these disgusting things while innocent women and children being killed on both sides. Like, it is not a fucking just a post and a meme. And if you talk about you're anti-Semitic, like this fucking asshole said, it's like it needs to be talked about. Like, why are we just supporting all-out war by Israel? How come we can't talk about peace? How come we cannot have peace? And we know Hamas and Hezbollah have a sick, evil fringe effect on the politics of the Gaza Strip. And, the problem is that Fatah is a part of it all on the Palestinian side. Fatah renounces violence, and they don't want this, but they don't have an influence and they don't control. And I don't understand all of it. I don't understand any of it. But we need to talk about these things so we can understand more. Like, education should be the answer, not fucking lobbing goddamn fucking rockets when Israel has, like, these invisible bullets that they can use. They have one of the best fucking, fucking special forces in the world, in the Middle East at least. It's just like there's another way of, even if it's Hamas doing these disgusting evil things, there's another answer other than just lobbing rockets the way that these two sides of the Gaza Strip have been doing for the last 20 years. It's just disgusting and upsetting. And especially it comes from teaching a Palestinian student for 2 years, right after 9/11 happened. With her helping me understand, like, the bigger picture in the Middle East. It is such a complicated a region of everything. I mean, do you know who the Baaths and the Sunnis, the Shiites, and the Kurds are? Have you ever heard these things? They're the tribes of Iraq who actually went to civil war after we killed Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was actually keeping these tribes together. And once we killed him, the Sunnis, the Shiites, the Baaths, and the Kurds sing along. You can learn these words. They became this huge civil war. And I think even part of it's still going to this day. And so every time the U.S. sticks its fucking $400 billion military complex nose into anything in the Middle East, it just gets fucking worse. And that's why I'm also pissed off about how right now, all of a sudden, all over the social media, it's I stand with Israel, I stand with Israel. That's great. Fuck Hamas, fuck this evil shit. But staying with Israel right now is also having a subconscious context being sold by our Caucasian-dominated news cycle of I then stand with the U.S. going to war in support of Israel. And that should not be the answer. The U.S. doesn't fucking know how to wage a war for shit. When was the last time the U.S. waged a fucking successful war? Vietnam? Afghanistan? Iraq? I mean, the fact that hardworking, good, meaning like moms and dads have lost their lives for the last 20 years fighting in the U.S. military, that could have been avoided, and the freedom fighters, that kill them, or Friendly Fire, which has so many books now on Friendly Fire, killing our soldiers. It's like, we don't fucking learn a thing. We don't learn a thing, and it's obviously that's almost nothing's being learned in the last 70 years or so in Israel and Palestine. In 1947, after having millions of Jewish people massacred and killed in Auschwitz and Niederhagen, and Niederhagen was a women's prison where the women shaved each other's heads before being poisoned by the Zyklon B nerve gas right outside the shadow of Castle Wolfsburg. All these disgusting atrocities happened in the concentration camps during the Holocaust, which still people barely talk about, and there's barely any movies on. And, people had to sew their own clothes before being shot. The Jewish prisoners had to fucking make cakes and coffees for the SS commanders that were killing them daily. I mean, and often then their corpses were beheaded and shot into, while the SS women, the Furies of Hitler, the women made like picnics. They made picnics while these mass graves and mass shootings were being done outside the concentration camps. So we took the survivors of the Holocaust and we put them in Israel, and we put them on the Gaza Strip in 1947, and that's where a lot of this trouble started. They've been fighting over all the territory ever since, and it goes back tribally to the Amalekites and the Akkadians, were the giants that were Goliath, and Goliath fought David. David was an Israelite, and the Israelites were fighting the Akkadians and the Amalekites, and today all these fucking idiots on TikTok spin the Amalekites as they were giants of the Nephilim descended from the stars. But really, it's about tribal warfare. The tribal warfare has existed in the Middle East, the Eastern Cradle, for thousands of years, and this conflict this weekend, as disgusting and atrocious as, Hamas, it's all this, it's fucking disgusting. Okay, I'm not even going to say it's disgusting and horrible. But again, it's part of this bigger, complicated picture that has had no resolution, and diplomacy has failed. And, we need to talk about why these people are attacking, and how do we end it all? How do we end it all? And again, my final thing is Clint Watts wrote this amazing book called Messing with the Enemy. He's a former intelligence officer that talks about how, in 2015 or so, Twitter bots, ISIS, Al-Qaeda created a false Twitter feed that said the, explosion had occurred at the White House, and it pummeled the stock market. $113 million were down within like an hour. And Clint Watts talks about how honeypots are being used by algorithms and ISIS and Al-Qaeda, saying it's a sexy woman wants to talk to you, and you DM them, and next thing you know, your identity's stolen. And that identity can be used, for fake terrorist passports. Clint Watts talks about all this danger, and that's why it's like these fucking celebrities this weekend showing these disgusting video pics of women being raped and killed. It's like, let's think about the primary sources. Where are these videos coming from? Is it from a certified source like the UN or Human Rights Watch or UNICEF or whatever? Like, when we don't know what the source of these videos is, there's dangers in that. And it doesn't mean that the atrocities aren't happening against Israeli women. It means, like, where are the videos coming from? Are they all of this weekend? Are they of other terrorist groups to spin the narrative, okay? And that's what it comes down to, spinning the narrative on both sides. It's definitely a part of what social media does these days. It spins a narrative. If we're not careful, whether it's like in the best of intentions of finding out where these things come from, you know, it's just going to lead to more disasters and more atrocities. And honestly, like, fuck you, any celebrity that this weekend was showing posts of women being raped and killed. Like, if you're a celebrity, especially, George Clooney and Don Cheadle went to Africa to help things out. They realized that certain things they were doing was not helping this situation. And Clooney and Cheadle were really smart to continue donating, but they realized, let's hand this over to the educated ones, to the real ambassadors, to the people who actually know what they're doing. And that's what these celebrities should be doing. If you really care about what's happening in Israel, Palestine, get behind a really certified organization and help and donate and charity, and then have your soapbox. But to just, like, you know, spew out these disgusting images and everything, and you're outraged, and then say if anybody talks about it, you're anti-Semitic, it is just such fascist, one-sided, one-noted thing that is not the answer to the horrors of the world in this country. And again, when we all start posting, I support Israel, what it's really subconsciously saying is that we support the U.S. military, which is already being discussed this weekend, doing another fucking irresponsible thing to support their billion-dollar complex. And, you know, if we didn't learn from Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran, you know, it's like all these things led to so many civilian casualties, so many soldier casualties, and what do we get out of it? We got nothing out of it. The tribes are still fighting, and things are even worse. And we need to think about, you know, resolutions need to be resolutions. They don't need to be the profits like Cheney and Rumsfeld made, having $50 million contracts of the disposal of war waste in these burn pits that then affected thousands of soldiers in Iran and Iraq, you know, for a couple of years during that time. It's like we keep forgetting the past, and it just keeps becoming prologue. And again, the bottom line is, fuck these uneducated celebrities. If you are listening to these uneducated celebrities on anything, then you're endangering yourself. And these celebrities are endangering diplomacy and education in this country because they're just celebrities. And they need the following. They need the clickbait. And if they really passionately believe in anything, and they're so outraged by these things that happened this weekend, they should really shut up and go support someone who knows the research and can do things the proper right way, that isn't insulting and endangering free speech in this country and educated free speech. And that's it today. Happy Indigenous Day, you know, peace in the Middle East.